Okay, so welcome to Balancing with Yin and Yang, our drawing experience today. My name is Antje Howard, and I am very happy to see all of you here. First, I would like to say just one thing that I learned in my life about balance. A balance for me is not a state of being. Even if it would be very beautiful to just feel balanced all the time, real life just does not work like that. So what I learned is that balance for me personally is a movement. Balance is always adjusting, always coming back. And we're basically moving between two poles. Sometimes we're more on one side, sometimes we're more on the other side, but we definitely don't get stuck in the middle, and we also don't want to get stuck in the middle, because life is not about staying in one place. Life is about a constant movement. And so balancing, as I would call it, is a movement as well, is an activity that we are always asked to adjust back to. Always asked to look at, okay, where are we now on the spectrum? And maybe if we've been on one side for very long, we may have to go back. We also see that in everyday life, how it just happens by itself. Life kind of works that way. So for example, if we overwork ourselves and we never take a break, then eventually our body is going to take a break for us, and we're going to have the breakdown, for example. And in order for that not to happen, we can learn to do small adjustments in everyday life. And this is something that I want to talk about today, and we want to draw that today in a Neurographica drawing. So before we do that, I would like to invite you to just tune in for a moment. Make yourself comfortable wherever you are right now. Put your feet on the ground if that's accessible for you. And take a few deep breaths. And with the breath, also try to release anything that you don't need right now, any tension that there might be, any thoughts that may take you away from this moment. Just taking a deep breath and blowing it out. You're very welcome to make sounds or sighs, anything that makes you feel more relaxed, using the breath. Big inhales and exhales. And just start observing your breath. Observing how your body fills with air and then empties out again. Taking deep, slow breaths. And while you observe your breath, try to become aware of your breathing pattern. Is your inhale longer than your exhale, or your exhale longer than your inhale? Just observing it. And if you wish to, you can try to adjust them to where the inhale is just as long as the exhale. Bringing your breathing into a steady, balanced movement in and out. And just by observing the breath, we can already learn a lot about yin and yang. Just look at what happens, how your body is filled with air until it's completely full, and then empty again, exhaling. And you can also learn a lot of very interesting things about yin and yang, that it is intrinsically connected. There is no inhale without an exhale. They always come together. This is one of the lessons that yin and yang can teach us. There is no light without darkness, no full without empty, no movement without stillness. Another thing that we can learn from the breathing is that it really depends on the perspective that we look from, whether we see a thing as yin or yang. If you, for example, see how your body fills itself and empties itself, filling the yang, emptying the yin. But if you look at it from a different perspective, you see how in order to fill your body with air, you actually need to relax your muscles, you need to let go into a yin state to fill your body with air, and then push the air out, contract the muscles, go into a yang movement to push the air out of your body. So it really depends on the point of view that we look from. Yin and yang are not determined from the outside. We can always look at it from different perspectives. So we're gonna start looking at our lives from these different perspectives too. So while I change my camera view, you can just take another deep breath. And then whenever you feel ready to, you can slowly open your eyes. And then choose the pen or drawing utensil that you will use today. And we will start our drawing very simply with a big circle. I intentionally did not tell anyone to bring a compass because I always feel that in Neurographica drawing, we kind of want to get away from being perfect, taking the perfectionism out a little bit. So we will just freehand draw a big circle. More or less in the middle of your picture, however big it feels right now. And I'm just gonna start to do a kind of round movement with my pen. Of course, it's not gonna be a perfect circle, but this is really what it's all about. And we're gonna go around the circle several times. And just keep the breathing. Keep your awareness on your breathing. While you do this, we're going to come back to this over and over again throughout the drawing process. And just go around it as many times as you need until you kind of feel that this is more or less a circle. And next we're going to find the very center of this circle. And again, of course, it doesn't have to be perfect, just more or less the center. I'm going to make a little point there. And then we will draw a half a circle out from the center to the side. I'm going to draw a half a circle. And again, this of course is not going to be perfect as well. I'm just going to go way and back my half circle a few times, adjusting it until it feels more or less round. And then I go around and make another half circle in the other direction. And this is our yin and yang shape. Very simple, without wanting to make it perfect. And I'm going to call this lower half yin and the upper half yang. And I'm going to invite you to do the same. If your drawing happens to be like this or turned in any way, that is totally fine. Just decide which one is yin and which one is yang. And if you have a lower one, the lower one would be yin. And why we do that will come out later. And then in this drawing, we always have this little circle in the center of the half circle. And this one is a very interesting concept because here we see that the yin is already present in the yang and the yang is already present in the yin. And if we look back at our breathing, that makes perfect sense because we cannot inhale without the seed of the exhale already in it. So the yin is always already present in the yang, and the yang is always present in the yin. They're intrinsically connected. And now I invite you to start looking at your personal life and see what activities of your everyday life, where you would place them in this schematic idea of yin and yang. Yin being the one that is more quiet, more relaxed, more letting go, maybe not talking so much. And yang being the one that's active, that is very communicative, that's always busy. And so let us start maybe in the morning and ask yourself, okay, how long do you actually sleep? Sleep, of course, is one of the most yin things we can do. So I'm going to draw a circle in my yin field, and I'm going to call it sleep. You are free to write things into the circles. You don't have to do that. I'm just doing that because I feel that it helps me to really, especially after I made the drawing, to look back and realize like all the things that I found in my life. So let's say you get up really, really early, for example. Getting up early means that probably you don't sleep quite as much. Also, the early morning hours, they are full of yang energy because the sun is rising, the day is beginning. So from the morning until midday, we are in the yang phase of the day. Whereas if you would get up close to noon, that would be a very yin thing to do because afternoon, the energy is actually kind of falling again. So getting up early, I'm going to start putting that here. Then what are you doing in your morning? Do you have time to meditate, for example? Do you have time to eat a slow, big breakfast? Do you have time to, I don't know, maybe write or make art or do something like this, do something for yourself? Or do you rush to work? Do you just have a quick coffee and a quick bite? Do you feel stressed in the morning, for example? Is there a lot going on? Are there kids? So just look at your morning, and wherever you feel your morning activities go, just draw circles in that space. So my morning is relatively quiet most of the times, and I have a lot of time to do little things. I often have time to do Qigong. I often have time to actually have a nice breakfast. I usually don't rush in the morning, so my mornings are going to be more yin. And then look at how your day progresses from there. What kind of job do you do, for example? I work a lot from home, which means that I'm alone. And being alone is a more yin thing. Being surrounded by people and in interaction all the time is very yang. So if you work in a store, for example, and you have to talk to a bunch of people all the time, that would be very yang. But if you work alone in front of your computer, that would be very yin because also you don't move a lot. So for me, I have a lot of circles in my yin area and just a few ones in my yang for that. And as you can see, I make circles in all different sizes. They can be large, they can be small. It kind of also depends maybe what kind of activities they are, how important they are, how big they are in your life. Just kind of slowly look through all the different things and see what comes up for you. Interestingly, we say, for example, that if you work in front of your computer but you're stressed a lot, that is very yang. Everything that works with our mind, my mental activity, is a yang thing, because it's yeah, kind of yeah, it's like an activity of the mind. So mental work and stress, for example, stress is a very yang thing. So if your job is stressful, then you can make your big yang circle, I guess. And then you can look at how the rest of your day goes. Like, do you have time for lunch, for example? Do you take a nice lunch, or do you just rush and eat a quick sandwich before you have to go to the next meeting? Or do you have time for that? Do you have time to hang out with your friends for a moment? Or is it just really all about work? Do you run around a lot, or do you sit a lot? So we also see that there's not one thing is bad and the other thing is good. So some yang activities are really good. Moving your body, for example, is kind of culturally seen as a good thing, whereas sitting a lot is actually not so good. And being stressed is not really good. Being relaxed is good. So yin and yang have nothing to do with good or not. They are not intrinsically, they don't have a I don't even know how you call that. Well, you probably know what I mean. They don't mark good or bad. They just mark active or inactive, or doing a lot or not, speaking a lot or not, being relaxed or not. And then, yeah, you look at the rest of your day. Like when you come home, what do you do? Like, do you go to the gym, for example, or do you do yoga, or do you do meditation or anything like that? And look at it, you can look at it from different perspectives, which is also interesting. One of the things that my Qigong teacher told me was that activities can really look different in different lights. So if I look, for example, at taking a walk, compared to sitting down, taking a walk is very yang. It's very active. I'm actually moving around, I'm moving my body, I'm breathing fresh air probably. So walking can be yang, but compared to running, for example, walking is quite yin. Walking is really actually a quite relaxed activity. So it always depends on what you compare it with. So yin and yang are two things to be compared to each other. So if you had a super stressful day, then taking a yoga class may totally relax you. On the other hand, if you had a day that where you were sitting all the time, for example, then taking a yoga class, even if it's the same yoga class, may actually be for you a very charging activity that brings your blood into flow, and that helps you move, and that helps your blood move. So one thing can have many different faces. An interesting activity as well is being creative, because being creative can, on the one hand, of course, relax us, but it can also bring our mind into movement. It can give us new ideas. It can be very active. So nothing is by itself just yin or yang. Yin or yang are always compared to each other. And I hope you made a few circles now. I have a lot of circles open here, so I can still kind of create my day. What I want you to think of is how you can balance yourself. Balancing is really the thing that, when I see that I have all my activities of the day in my yin side, for example, I'm sitting all day, I'm sleeping a lot, I'm alone all the time, I eat a lot maybe. Those are all yin activities. And then I have to think of, okay, how can I balance that? What can I do to bring more yang into my life? Maybe I have to start jogging. Maybe meditation is not the thing that will actually help me because it's another yin activity. Maybe I should work out. Maybe I should do a hot yoga practice. Other things that we can do are also, we can influence these energies with the foods that we eat, for example, with the drinks that we drink. If we drink a lot of cold drinks, they're very yin. If we drink a lot of hot drinks, they're yang. So we have, for example, a hot ginger tea that starts your digestive fires. It's a very yang drink. So if I sit all day and my feet get cold, then also a hot drink may help me. So there's many different things that can help you to balance. And now I'm going to slowly go over into starting to draw lines. Anybody who has not participated in Neurographica drawing so far, we are drawing lines in the drawing to create connections, to create movement. The line is also what brings energy into this drawing. So now I kind of have the static image of, okay, I have my one activities down there, everything yin, and then I have my yang things up there. And now I'm going to draw lines through this drawing. And I'm going to just very intuitively move around my picture. And when I get to the yin part, I'm going to go through my circles. One yin quality that I really like about yin is that it's kind of chaotic. So I'm going to create a little bit of chaos in my yin side by going through these circles. But then on the other hand, I have yang, and yang is more about order, structure. So when I'm going with my line through the yang side, I'm actually going around the circles. I'm going to try to keep the structure of these circles alive and not go through them. So I'm just going to go through a few times, so maybe you understand what I mean. I'm just going to move my line through, and then when I get to the yang side, I will slow down a little bit and make sure that I go on the outside of my circles, whereas in the yin, I want to go through my circles. The other thing about this line is that we want it to be as organic as possible. The neurographic line, or I think they also call it Piscarev line, named after the founder of the method, it kind of mimics the movement of nature. So if you think of how a tree grows, how a river flows, they are never in a set pattern, but they're always kind of free flowing, I would maybe call it, surprising as well. So allow your hand to just move through the drawing and surprise you with where it goes. And especially in the yin side, you really want to let it flow freely and create as much chaos as you can. Whereas when we go to the yang side, you kind of want to follow what is already there and actually adapt to your surroundings a little bit. Whereas in the yin side, we don't adapt to the surrounding, we just let it flow. And we're going to do that for a little while. And while you do that, I'm inviting you to just observe, how does your body react to doing that? How does it feel for you to create all this chaos in the yin side and try to go with the structure in the yang side? And that way you kind of can find out too which one you may kind of adapt to easier, know which one may be a little bit complicated. Maybe it's hard for you to create all this chaos, or maybe it's harder for you to actually go with all these already structured lines there. I'm just going to do a few more until I have lines coming out in all directions. Flowing out in all directions. Maybe one more. Okay. And now what we do in every Neurographica drawing is rounding the corners. And now, of course, because I went all crazy and I created so many little lines in my yin half, I have a lot to round here. For everybody who has never heard of this before, I'm going to quickly explain it. So I'm going to just make a small circle here and go through it with 2 lines, maybe 3 lines. And so if I look at this now, I have all these little junctions here. Wherever my lines meet, I have a little cross. And so what we do now is we round out these corners so that the cross is not a cross anymore, but becomes a connection point where one line just flows into the other line. And what I like to do is, especially if I have little spaces like this, I just go with my pen inside the kind of form that I created and act as if this form was a round shape. And then I just color in the corners, so that out of my circle with a bunch of lines going through it, I now have this circle that has all these shapes inside of it and lines connecting to it. I hope that makes sense. And so now we're going to go all over the image and do that. And we don't have to be perfect. So that's another thing that I want to remind you of one more time. Neurographica is not about perfection. It's not about everything has to be exact, but it's always about how we feel about it. That's the most important point. So here, there are, of course, some corners that really kind of bother me. I want to have all my lines from the outside being nice and connected to my big circle. And then I have in my yin side, of course, I have a lot of little lines now. So I'm gonna just go around and look into all these shapes. And in a way, for me, working with these shapes is always a way to look inside and kind of feel into what do these shapes do to me. So I'm inviting you to check in with yourself every now and then, feel into what does that do with my body now? Do any emotions come up? Do any thoughts come up? Where am I going right now? And without really trying to change it, just becoming aware. And just slowly going through your drawing. And even if you don't get it all done now, because you have so many little corners like I do here right now, then you can always come back to it later. So do not stress yourself out. Just try to go with what is right now. Feel into it. And see where it takes you. And if it makes you feel more balanced. And we found out all these little aspects, and for me it's really about finding your own balance. So as I said, for example, like we have so many different activities that we could potentially do. When we come home after work, we could go for a run. We could also sit and meditate. We could do yoga. We could do some other practice. The question is, what is going to help you? So it's never about what is the next big thing, what does everybody else do? Because nobody has the same life and they don't need what you need. So what I invite you to think of or to contemplate while you draw like this is, how can you bring more balance into your own life? Maybe you found out that there were so many more circles on one side. Most of the activities you do are on one side of the circle. Then what can you do to bring some more things into the other circle? But it's also about looking at the greater picture, because our life is not isolated from the world around us, and the world around us goes through circles, through cycles. For example, here in California now we have spring beginning. Spring is the beginning of yang. We go out of the winter time. The winter time was very yin, where we had to rest a lot, where we did not maybe do a lot of activities, where it was really about kind of resting and relaxing. And now we have the springtime coming and there's so many things to do, and I can definitely feel that energy. So I get up earlier, for example. Automatically in wintertime I kind of like to sleep very long and allow my body and my mind to be more quiet. And now in springtime we start to plant the garden and everything needs a lot of attention. There's so much to do all the time. Also the days get much longer. So our environment actually shows us where we are right now, which phase we are right now. So we never stay in one phase. We never stay in a only yin environment, but our environment actually changes. And we can adapt to it and change with it and find a way to be more active in spring, for example, automatically. Or we are super active in summer and we may stay up much later in summer because there's just so much light. And then in winter when there's no light, well, then it's okay to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. But in summer, I definitely cannot do that. So it's also okay sometimes to be more on one side of things. The balancing is not about every day has to be perfectly balanced out and we have to do exactly as many yin activities as we have yang activities. I think it's very important to see that there's a bigger picture in that. And that is also connected to our life cycles. So as human beings, when we are born, the first years we are only growing. You know, everything we do is growing and learning and soaking up so many information. And when we get older and older, we just can't move that much, and we just can't do that many things, and we just need more quiet time, and that is perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So what I really want to emphasize here is that yin and yang are always relational. They are never isolated from each other, but they're also relating to everything in our surrounding. So it's good to just adapt to it and not fight it, not try to be super active in the midst of winter, for example, just because we have that idea that we need to be active all the time. Our modern world is a very yang world where activity is considered as better than being not so active. And I think that is one of the things that I also want to get away from. Saying that one thing is better and the other is worse. It's not about that. It's always about adapting to what we need right now. And sometimes we just need to be quiet. Sometimes we need to be more active. And to just be okay with that. And to keep it in mind as well that if we have a stressful time, then maybe in the future we want to plan a quiet time just to balance it out. So balance does not have to be immediate. It can be tomorrow, but maybe next year is too late. So it needs to be according to what activities we need. If we need a lot of energy, then we also need to find a way to receive rest in whatever way we can. And of course we can push ourselves, but we can only push ourselves for so long. So in the end, it will come off somewhere. And then if we live at 100 all the time, then we may have a short life. It's just what it is. On the other hand, living very slow does not necessarily mean that it's better. So there is no better or worse. I hope I made that clear. I guess so. So I'm going to round just a little bit more. I have way too many lines here now, but it is what it is. If you feel tension in any way coming up, you always remember to breathe. You can use your breath to release, to let go. You can release sighs as well, make little sounds. Sound can actually help enormously to relax. Whew. And then just keep observing. Where does your mind wander? How do you feel emotionally? And where does your body go? How does it feel? What sensations come up? And of course, we have to round way more in our yin part here now, but that makes perfect sense because yin is all about relaxation, and this rounding part is the part of the Neurographica method that will help us relax, will help us to get into a kind of flow state. I'm just going to be quiet for a moment, keep rounding. And just keep moving through your picture. And as I said, we don't want to be perfect here. We want it to feel good, to feel kind of comfortable, to feel where you start liking your drawing. That is the actual goal of this drawing. Nobody else has to like it. It just needs to have an impression on you. And maybe remind you of something, some little thing in your life that you can do to bring yourself into more balance, to find more balance. It's very kind of funny that we say that we find balance, because actually we cannot find it, we cannot lose it. We can just come back to it again and again and again. And the balance is not stable, never stable, always going to move some more in the other direction. Life would be kind of boring too if we would just float in the middle without ups and downs, without any excitement. So I'm slowly getting to where I think I feel more or less rounded. And as I said, you can always come back to that. So if you want to join me in colors now, you're very welcome. If you want to stay with the rounding because you feel that it's not enough yet, you're also welcome to stay with that. And now for the colors. For this drawing, I really actually like to choose colors. Usually in Neurographica, I go with the colors that I feel like. In this drawing, I kind of feel that I want to have cooler, darker colors in the bottom for the yin and lighter, brighter colors and warmer colors in the top for the yang. So I'm actually choosing colors. You are very free to pick colors however you wish. So you can, of course, go with my kind of color scheme. You can also just grab the color that jumps into your hand. You can take your favorite color. You can take whichever color feels like it wants to go there. This is a lot of times how I choose color. I just kind of feel into it. So the coloring process needs to be very free and very open. I'm going to go with, got so many colors here. Some blues in the bottom. I also really love blue, so it's perfect for me. So the way I color is I take the color that I want to start with and I just go anywhere in the drawing where I kind of feel it wants to go. And then I just start coloring. I'm going to leave this center circle here free to put my other color in. Actually Start this one as well. So the center, as I said, we have the yin already in the yang and the yang already in the yin. I'm going to just mark those for me so that I don't accidentally go in it without the color, but I mean, even that would not matter. But so what I do is I just follow the lines that I see. One of the things that I really love about Neurographica is that we have not really rules about the coloring at all. It's more about breaking the rules. So I don't know if you learned to color just within the lines when you were a little kid. I learned that. And when I learned that in Neurographica, we can go over the lines and freely color wherever we want to, that was kind of a really relief for me. It's a very new experience to color freely, to color with my feeling more than what I think where it needs to go, where it has to go. So I just go through the picture and allow myself to go wherever my pen leads me. I use the coloring as a very intuitive process. And so what we want to do is create larger areas that kind of belong together, that we bring together with the color. And I just follow the path through the drawing. Until I feel that I got enough of this one color, and then I go with the next one. But we can also, that's one thing that's really nice with colored pencils. You can layer the colors on top of each other. So I can layer different blues and then they kind of flow into each other. And you do not have to color everything. It's totally fine to leave white spots if that is okay with you. Another thing that's nice with the colored pencils is that, of course, you can do kind of shadings. No, some parts may be darker, other parts may be lighter. Yes, I just kind of go through my yin and my yang part now and feel into this. With these, I kind of like to have the water feeling on the one side and the fire feeling on the other side. Like one thing that I find really interesting is that the Chinese actually sometimes they use fire and water as basically other words for yin and yang. Fire is the element that is the most yang, and water being the element with the most yin quality. It's cool and down flowing. The water is so hot, moving upward. And also while you color, keep breathing, of course, keep feeling into it and really become aware of where does it take you? Where does this image go for you when you color it now? Maybe some parts become more clear. Maybe you have different ideas. Maybe some insights coming up. Just moving the color through the drawing. Especially on the yin side, because we have so many little lines there. It's very nice to just let it flow through. For some reason, I always start with the yin. Probably because my life has so much yin in it. And then I need to take an effort to make more yang, more activity, more bringing myself out there, talking, connecting to people. And creating. Okay, so I'm going to go over to color some yang in. Got this really nice pink. So there, it's basically the same. Of course, the structure is really different. So you may get into actually coloring the circles, which is also fine. As I said, there's not really rules. There's no right and wrong with coloring. This is just about feeling and enjoying the color, playing with it. Really about bringing your inner child out as well. There's some yellow, really bright colors. Maybe some red. And it's really nice to feel like the contrast between those two. That's why I like to use very different colors, have a stronger contrast, kind of emphasize this feeling of the two sides of one coin. These two different energies. And interestingly, in the end, like everything has both of them in that. That is even the water, even though I just said that water is the most yin, water has also different qualities. For example, if we see cold water compared to warm water, we have the cold water is much more yin than the warm water. So I like to see these things in comparison and on a kind of scale. So we don't have absolute yin or absolute yang. We always have more yin or more yang. And like to me, that makes more sense than trying to determine if a thing is completely yin or completely yang. That's never true, I think, for anything. It's always depending on what we compare it to. So that also allows us to look at ourselves that way. No, we don't. And also decide what you actually want to compare yourself to. So maybe if you're a mother that has a lot to do in the house and has children and everything is always crazy, then, well, you may not have to compare yourself to a person who does not have children and who doesn't have all the stresses that you go through daily. Of course, their life is going to be different. Until you can choose how you look at it, how you look at your own life, how you look at other people. And it kind of brings us away from judging ourselves as well as others. I'm kind of getting there with my colors. And we have these areas where they kind of connect, float into each other, colors mix. Those are often my favorite areas. And so now we have 2 more things to do. You are, of course, welcome to color more. You can also come back to that later and just go through your drawing again as much as you want to. Put some more in the middle here. And there. But now I basically, well, I kind of tend to always color everything, even though we don't have to do that. It's hard for me not to color everything. So what I invite you to do now is draw some extra big lines. In Neurographica, we call these field lines. I like to describe them as rivers because I feel that that's a really beautiful picture of how these lines move through our picture. So what we will do is we start at one side of the drawing, whichever side you feel. I'm just going to start here. And then I draw a big line. If you have a big marker, that's the time for the big marker. If you don't have a big pen, you just go over it with a pen several times. And then I kind of move this big line through my picture and I let it go wherever it wants to go. So I literally just follow the flow of this line with my hand. And we can make maybe 2 or 3 or, well, maybe 5, I would say maximum. And just move them through the picture, starting on one side and slowly flowing through. And what we say in Neurographica is that these lines kind of provide the drawing with energy. So if you imagine that the drawing keeps on going outside of here beyond my paper, then this is where this energy comes from outside of my drawing and infuses it with energy now, with power. Pavel Piskarev also says that it's kind of where the drawing becomes a touch spiritual. So you can imagine that you are connecting to a higher power with these lines. Whatever feels kind of makes sense for you personally. So for me, it's really a lot about nurturing my picture and nurturing my vision too that I created here. I created a vision of my life where I can find balance, where I can go from my kind of chaotic yin side and then go into my bright and colorful yang side. And then the very last step is to look at your drawing and see if your eye is drawn anywhere in particular. So if I look at my drawing now, I feel that this area here, for some reason, because all of my lines meet there, it seems to have a lot of energy. There's a lot going on there. So I'm going to emphasize that even more by enhancing this one circle here, emphasizing it with a very big outline, so that when I look at my drawing, this is going to be the first thing that I look at. In this particular drawing with the yin and yang now, you don't have to search for one circle. If it comes up like it did for me right now, then that's the right one to go with. If you don't feel like you see a focus point in your drawing, then I would recommend just going and making your entire outline, the entire yin-yang figure bigger by giving it a fat outline. So if you find anything inside your drawing that really captures your attention, where you really feel like, oh, somehow this my attention goes there and it seems important, then you can emphasize that. If you don't find a space like that in your drawing, then you just go with emphasizing the entire outline. And you can, in theory, also choose that consciously. I like to kind of look at the drawing first and see where the drawing guides me. But sometimes we can think of, for example, here, interestingly, the circle that I emphasized now says mental work, which is really what I'm doing a lot. And so it makes perfect sense to me that this is the area in my life that I kind of need to focus on. And I probably also need to focus on how to balance that with other things. So my drawing basically totally gave me a message right now. If your message is not that clear, that is really okay too. But it may come. Sometimes a message like that will come to you if you look at your drawing a few days later, and then you suddenly see, oh my God, this one circle there, it kind of sticks out and it really tells me something. Or you see a different shape that suddenly it shows itself, or you see how the color tells you something. So I would recommend to put the picture up somewhere where you can see it. Also, of course, if you want to keep drawing, draw as long as you feel you want to work with this. Draw as many lines as you feel are comfortable. Pavel always says the more lines the picture has, the better it is. So just add some more lines. That's always an option. If you feel unsatisfied with your picture, for example, it's always an option to really just put more lines in and see where it takes you from there. So I'm going to come back face to face now, if I figure out how to do this. Hello, and I thank you for joining my drawing today. Please keep drawing as long as you need to. I just wanted to make two very short announcements. I am going to teach 2 different courses next month. One is the certified introductory course to Neurographica. It's the Neurographica Basics course, where we go through the entire process of the 7 steps that we do in every single Neurographica drawing, and you will learn why we do them, what they are influencing, like which part of your brain, for example, or which part of your being they will influence. Pavel Piskarev, being a psychologist, of course, his drawing method is very deeply based in his ideas and his theories. So we're going to go into that, and we will learn 2 different methods that you can use for yourself whenever you need it. The first one is called the algorithm for releasing inner constraints, which translates to an algorithm that helps you to overcome inner tension, to work on self-defeating behaviors, on fears, on inner blockages, on anything that you basically don't want in your life. We will learn a method to deal with those kind of things, to find a way to bring them onto the paper, and then to work through this 7-step process that he calls Neurographica, to, well, basically change your mind around it. Because he says that most of our problems, they start in the mind, and so with Neurographica we have the possibility to change our minds. And the second thing, first maybe the second process that we learn is the algorithm to clarify your intention, and that is an algorithm that can help you if you don't know what to do next, if you're kind of, just need to spark some ideas, find something new, also to find what's the next step, where do I go from here? So that's another process that we will learn that can help you with that. And so these two are a little bit like self-coaching methods, I would explain them. And this course is the introduction to all of this, to the entire Neurographica practice. And the other course that I am offering in collaboration with another friend of mine is called Ancestral Arts. It's a completely different thing, where we will work with our ancestors through drawing. I'm not going to really go into that right now, but so if you're interested in any of this, come to my website and find it.